I'd like to talk to you about what might be one of the most important leadership capacities that we're going to need to develop and cultivate over the coming few months as we hopefully exit from the COVID crisis and re-enter some new form of normality. In doing so, I believe it's particularly important that we don't underestimate the effect of quarantine on trauma. On February the 26th this year, The Lancet published a report exploring the psychological impact of quarantine and found that PTS scores, post-traumatic stress scores, are 4 times higher in parents and children who've been in quarantine than those who have not. The World Economic Forum published various reports that showed symptoms of trauma-related mental health disorders in 23 to 28% of parents who'd been in quarantine, as opposed to a norm of about 14%. When people have been in trauma or are in trauma, we treat them with tenderness. Tenderness is a term that clinical psychologist Faith Betherland used to describe a need discovered by Japanese psychiatrist Takeo Doi, a need that we don't grow out of after infancy, but we do stop talking about. Tenderness is the way to treat people and engage with people who are in trauma or who have been through trauma. Tenderness is hardly a word we use a lot in business. And yet tenderness is not only going to be important from a humanitarian perspective in the coming months, but also economically. Dr. Elk van Hoof from the Vrije University of Brussels predicts a secondary epidemic of burnout, stress, and absenteeism. And the World Economic Forum published a report by Eurofound that shows that people at high risk of stress-related disorders are likely to be 35% less productive than those who are not. A friend of mine, Ian Weinberg, a famous neurosurgeon, explains the pathology. Fear, which we've all experienced over the last months, and the adrenaline that results from it leads to excessive inflammation and raised cortisol levels, which results in suppression of immunity and resulting illness. And so the tenderness with which we treat people is not just about making them feel better and heal more quickly, but it's also about addressing their wellness and health, keeping them healthy, keeping them well, and keeping them productive as well. Tenderness is the new leadership skill that we're going to need to cultivate. And although we need it for the present times, hopefully it's a skill that we're going to keep and use for a long time to come. Tenderness is not an action. Tenderness is not a word. Tenderness is not even a feeling. Tenderness is the way we act and speak and feel when we're engaging with another person. And tenderness needs to be something that comes from deep within our hearts. It needs to be something authentic. Amidst our economic fears and desires to get the economy back going and to get our businesses productive again, it is too likely that we can become task-oriented and lose sight of the fragile human hearts we're dealing with. Be tender with your family. Be tender with your employees, your teams, your colleagues. But most of all, appreciate that you too have been through trauma. Be tender with yourself.